Well, hello everybody, and welcome to episode 17 of Huell's Gold. I'm Chris.
No, you're not. You can definitely tell the difference between us this week because I have a sinus infection.
You can't even tell.
Come on, dude. Sounds like I'm talking underwater. Almost like I have a sepia tone on my voice, much like Huell has on his whole body in the open of this episode.
How did they pitch this to each other?
It must have been the editor, because this is what they would do in editing.
Dude, that filter is...
Yeah. It's fake.
Sepia.
Yeah. So, this week, episode 17, it's called Singing Cowboys. And this is definitely a departure from our normal California's Gold subject matter. This is weird stuff.
It's real weird. I mean, you were mentioning... We'll probably get to this a little later, but it almost feels like some of these were video logs.
Yeah. I think the last two segments were video logs, which I really wish there was a way to look those up. KCET still owns those, so we don't have access.
66.66% of the episode was
Exactly.
video log.
It also is weird because Huell, very, very much didn't go for any sort of celebrity tie-ins to his shows, which is all this is. I mean, he's literally going to a famous person's museum and talking to a famous person.
Right. Well, since we're, I guess, at Universal Studios, we could talk. Have you ever been there?
I have a long time ago.
I've never been.
What?
I know.
You've been to Disneyland, right?
Yeah, I have. Well, once I was 2, and then 2 times since then.
Well, yeah.
I've been to Six Flags a lot more often.
Yeah, that was our most go because,
Logjammer and Ninja.
And the half price if you're bringing a Coke can. That always helped.
But I had never ridden... Well, I haven't ridden... I'm trying to think of the biggest roller coaster. I think Batman.
That was the biggest one that you've ridden?
Yeah, ever.
Okay. It's like
I almost rode Free Fall.
Well, they're a bit more wild now.
Oh, yeah.
But Universal Studios, yeah, I went when I was I think 11 or 12. So it's much different now than it was then.
You have friends that go a lot, right?
Yeah. They're not inviting me.
Come on.
Just kidding, guys. Maybe I'll go one day. So yeah, this not video log, California's Gold, masquerading as a video log, starts with Huell on the Universal lot, dressed in the most costumey cowboy costume clothes you could possibly find. This plastic toy gun.
You were talking about how the lady at the mission last episode was...
Yeah, the culturally insensitive clothing.
This may be close. I don't know.
It's close, but Huell is just he's setting the stage since this is
it's fun.
showbiz.
You know what? How can you just see him smiling the whole time?
I mean, there's 2 things that he says that are very specific to this episode, this cowboy thing. He says, "Howdy, partners. I'm Huell Hauser," instead of "Hello, everybody."
And then as he sends us away, he says, "As in search for California's Cowboy Gold."
What a dork. I love it.
That's
but
good.
He sets us off on our journey. We're riding off into the sunset. Oh, before we get there, we got to talk about the theme this week. You heard it's another fiddle doodad episode or theme.
Oh, T-Mix.
Played by old Trail Mix from Los Angeles. Which I couldn't find. I mean, this band has such an obvious name that I couldn't find anything about Trail Mix, the band in Los Angeles. But
well, maybe the fiddle player broke away because he is a shredder.
Yeah,
he's like a Beyonce to their Destiny's Child.
So now he's playing with Montgomery Gentry now or someone. I don't know.
You never know.
But that was the theme. But we really need to know where we're going this week. So, Huell, tell us where we're going.
Now, the first stop on our singing cowboy adventure takes us to Victorville, a pleasant little town right off Interstate 15, a couple of hours driving time out of L.A. Our exact destination was impossible to miss because right out front there was this huge fiberglass palomino rearing up on its hind legs. And that in itself should tip you off as to who our first singing cowboy is. He's been riding into our lives on the giant silver screen and on television for years. The king of cowboys, Roy Rogers, with his ever-faithful horse, Trigger, and his ever-lovely leading lady, Dale. Starting back in the late 1930s, Roy was in 87 musical westerns, becoming the #1 box office star in all westerns for 12 straight years. And in 35 of those movies, Roy was teamed up with Dale Evans, his real-life wife. Yep, Roy and Dale and Trigger were quite a combination, and quickly became much more than just movie stars. They became part of the American scene, with literally millions of loyal fans. And today, many of those loyal fans make the pilgrimage to the Roy Rogers Dale Evans Museum in Victorville, a museum that is literally bulging with memorabilia.
Happy trails to you, Alan.
Thanks. All right, so we're in Victorville.
The town where everyone is named Victor.
Have you been?
I don't even know exactly where this is. Like, generally, I don't...
You know, it's in the high desert. I've been there once. Well, to a family reunion.
Who lives out in Victorville? Obviously, their name's Victor. Uncle Vic?
Well, here's the funny thing about my family. They're so massive that I don't even know whose house it was. When they took a picture, it was 3 horizontal pictures to make a pano.
Because it's not like there were
Because
iPhones.
there's probably like 80 cousins.
Oh, man.
Second
I forget
and
you
third
have this
cousins.
giant family.
Yeah, so I've been there, but I went to, I think a skate shop was out there, Pharmacy skate shop. And so I heard cool things about Victorville. And, you know, you go there. I didn't really know where to go. So
Too bad you didn't have this episode to guide you.
Right. I would have, instead of going to the museum, I went to the skate park.
Well, how old were you?
I was probably 13.
Yeah, it's more your speed anyway. Had you even seen a Western at that point?
Yeah, my dad was a big fan of Bonanza.
Okay.
And his, well, actually, his brother looked like Haas.
I
And
can
so
see
they went
that,
down
yeah.
to Mexico. They thought his brother Richard was Haas. And so he was signing autographs. I told you that one.
Yeah, I remember that now. Good old Rich.
That knows. I don't know.
I guess. So, yeah, we're at the Roy Rogers Dale Evans Museum in Victorville. And this seems like a wild place. And Huell starts it off out front, looking at the huge fiberglass Trigger statue.
And he almost stumbles.
He almost trips over the curb there.
His head's just looking straight up the whole time while he's walking.
But you heard in the clip, this place is chock full of junk.
Junk? Dude.
If this,
Rude.
you got to admit, if this wasn't Roy Rogers stuff, this would just be like an antique store.
Okay. Like Junkatique?
There you go. It's good stuff though, like all the things that he talked about, the pictures and the pocket knives and all the cars, everything that was there, and it's definitely not the place that I would have gone to by name alone. Mm-hmm. But watching this show, it seems like a trip.
What was your pops? Was he a Western guy?
Kinda, yeah. He did watch these kind of old movies. In fact, he would sing this Happy Trails song that we'll play a little bit of later. When I was a kid, and I thought he was off his rocker. I thought he made that up. And there was some other song, like I Got Spurs That Jingle Jangle Jingle. And he would say that to me when I was like 10. I thought he was a crazy person.
Okay.
And I just went with it.
I don't think in terms of the westerns, because we've talked about Bonanza. But my dad was more of an action western kind of guy, like a John Wayne sort of deal. So I mean, really, I didn't grow up around singing cowboys, so to speak.
Yeah, me neither. I mean, it's not like I was actually seeing these movies to put in context to these songs I was hearing. So I bet I would have liked it if we had seen that, but I was too busy watching Double Dare and stuff. And
Guts.
And yeah, Global Guts. And California's Gold as well. But
yeah. Well, did you notice when Huell was talking about the stuff, he used the word bulging as a
the place is
descriptor.
bulging with stuff.
Which I don't know what word I would have used.
Probably not bulging.
But not bulging.
No.
Yeah.
So we start off with Roy, Dusty.
What was that?
We start off with Roy Rogers Jr., otherwise known as Dusty, and he's kind of given a little intro to the collection, and he starts off with these wax figures of his mom and dad, Roy Rogers and Dale Evans. And
okay, here's the thing. In terms of what this is how I felt watching this segment for the first time. I was under the impression that his parents were dead.
Totally.
Super dead.
I had no idea going in whether they were alive or dead at the time of this recording. And he totally talks about them in the past tense.
Right, like, oh, they've been here, they haven't moved for 15 years.
Yeah.
To me, I thought, oh, they died 15 years ago. They made
Exactly.
wax figures to preserve their, I don't know, essence, legacy.
Yeah. But no, within like a minute, there they both are.
Right, but before we go, though, that's what makes it so awkward. When you think they're dead, is he kind of gives them like a longing stare.
Yeah, like, oh, I miss my pops and my moms.
It's kind of bizarre. And then it's one of those where if anyone has seen the Tule Lake episode with the roots, the horseradish roots,
yeah,
where the lady,
long,
it's like an
awkward
awkward interaction, and she looks at Huell and says, "Weird, huh?" to break the silence. Sort of one of those moments.
Because Huell is looking at these wax figures and pretty much just cracking up at them the whole time. Like he's like Beavis or something. Just just doesn't even have anything to say. Well, one thing that we need to find out is, are Roy Rogers and Dale Evans still alive?
We've got the world at our fingertips right here.
Look it up, brother.
I'm looking.
This is amazing.
Well, we're back.
We're back. So both are super not alive.
Yeah, they passed on.
So Roy became death July 6th, 1998.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Well, I said July 6th, 1998.
Yeah.
Oh, what did he die of?
Yeah.
Congestive heart. They both died of the same thing. Congestive heart failure. And Dale Evans died February 7th, 2001.
Okay. So a little while after this show was shot.
About 5 years ish.
Well, they're alive in this episode.
Yeah, they come busting in the next scene.
Yeah. And it's really an interesting little dynamic that this couple has here, because they're both celebrities.
Mm-hmm.
And we meet Dale and Roy, and they walk into this room full of fans, and these people are totally psyched to meet them.
Oh, yeah.
Like in a very subdued kind of older person way, that they're just so ecstatic but trying to maintain decorum.
Right. Well, there's a bit too when they first walk in. I think Roy, he gives a right handshake, and this guy, he
Yeah.
You notice the first guy is just giving these backwards left-hand handshakes?
Well, you notice that he's like holding his hat in the other hand. I'm wondering if it's a kind of like a Bob Dole situation where his hand is like,
Okay, yeah, maybe.
like injured or some sort, and he just holds a pen.
Right. It's really just a free-for-all on the handshake
Any
front.
hand, any side, doesn't matter.
There's one point where Double R,
Yeah.
he shakes the right hand of a guy with his left hand, and then he's shaking someone else's right hand with his right hand.
Yeah, it's just double shakes down the line.
Oh, yeah,
Two birds with one stone. He's a busy guy.
He is. Just getting it out of the way.
Yeah. Plus, they got somewhere to be. They got to get into the horse room.
Speaking of the horse room, This is the start of what you and I talked about before we got on the air here.
That Roy Dale tension that we're kind of
Yeah,
feeling.
there's definitely a tension, and the horses are where this tension is drawn out.
Yeah.
Because the first thing that Dale does, I'm sure you noticed, is she pets the first horse, and she says, "This is my horse."
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, they're pushed past her horse to the star of the show.
Even like you paused it here right at that moment, and Huell is like he's like looking forward in a way like, hurry up, lady, get out of the way. Just we got to get to the spot.
Oh yeah, because his eyes immediately, it's the back of her head, waiting to see if she's going to move forward, and then once she moves forward, his eyes go straight to Trigger.
Yep. Like there's a whole giant stuffed horse right in front of him, but he looks past it as like it's made of air.
Well, this is the thing, though. Look how they stuffed Trigger in comparison to, was it Buttermilk?
Buttermilk, yeah.
Buttermilk is just kind of like,
I'm tired. I just stand still forever. Trigger is rearing up, eyes ablazing. It's like night and day in comparison to the stances that they have.
Yeah.
It really is a testament to how important Roy seems to feel that Trigger is in comparison to Buttermilk. Because he's front and center, Buttermilk's in the background, and Dale is really kind of having to fight for the attention for herself and Buttermilk. Because what was she saying about the billing, like on their movie posters?
Oh, right. That, she was billed below. It was Trigger. It was Roy Rogers, Trigger, something else, Buttermilk, and then her.
Yeah.
But she doesn't say me.
No.
This is the weirdest part of the billing section. She says, and Dale Evans was billed last, or something along those lines.
That third person reference
Yeah,
to herself?
that's always trippy to me. I don't know if it's a generational thing, but I don't know.
Huell is kind of like gushing about Trigger and asking all these kind of basic questions. Like, oh, was he nice? And oh, was he easy to work with? And Roy is totally smitten with this horse. Like, what was he said?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Trigger. He was like part of the family. I couldn't bury him.
So I stuffed him.
Like, if your mom dies, you're not stuffing her and having her jumping up in the air and put her in a closet in front of a bunch of windows.
Right.
So it was a weird sentence, but he also said that losing Trigger was like losing one of his kids. And that made me think back to old Roy Jr., good old Dusty. He was looking longingly at those wax figures, maybe because those wax figures never compare him to a horse. This poor guy. These famous parents who wish he was a horse. Huell does ask Dale at one point, so are you jealous of Trigger? And she kind of throws it off a little bit, but my consensus is totally jealous.
I think so. And, it doesn't help that old Roy says that when he dies, he wants to be stuffed and put on top of the horse as well so he can smile at everybody.
He said it even more morbid than that. He's like, I told Dale that when I go, I want to be skinned and stuffed.
That's right.
So gross.
Oh, that's funny. Well,
was he? Do you think he was skinned and stuffed?
I think he was.
Look it up real quick.
This is amazing.
All right, we're back. So he wasn't skinned. Well, we don't know if he was skinned and stuffed, but he was buried.
Oh, like what you would do to a family member?
Right, but we don't know that he wasn't buried with Trigger.
true, I guess. I mean, I think Trigger's probably still at the museum.
You're right. Yeah, that's about it. The only other thing to note is when they show the scene of Dale, Roy, and Trigger
In one of those old movies they were in.
Yeah, she's walking forward, and he'll ask her, "Do you want to get up on the horse?" And she says, "Yeah." Did you notice that he picked her up straight from the ground?
Yeah, dude. It's like, so I know I make references to wrestling a lot. There's a wrestler named Cesaro who does this. He is up on the second turnbuckle and he pulls someone up into a vertical suplex from the apron. So it's like 2-3 extra feet of yanking a dude up. It's like that where he's just like having to go beyond his center of gravity to pick her up onto the horse. And I hope for both their sakes that this was a one-take shot because imagine.
Well, you and I were talking about it in that scene where she's kind of upset and walking.
Yeah.
Like that's maybe how she feels about Trigger and Roy together.
Totally.
And then she kind of stops to check her shoe, and then Trigger kind of pokes her in the back.
Yeah.
Kind of irritates her a little more.
Almost like a proverbial stab in the back.
Right.
Oh, you wish that Roy loved you as much as me.
Oh, man. But before they leave, did you notice what Dale said?
Yeah, because they sing the song, which I'm going to throw up into a clip here in a second. They sing this Happy Trails song, their big claim to fame, and Huell's thanking them.
And Roy gives the old, "God bless you."
Yeah.
And then Dale, what does she say?
She says, "And God bless you a lot." I didn't know there was amounts because if ever I say that, I guess I got to throw in a lot at the end just to make sure that they know it.
Or if it's a person you don't care for, a little bit. Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Just a little God bless scene.
Let's stay on the trail here, the happy trail, and move on along to our next segment. Huell, kick that horse into high gear.
Happy trails to you until we meet again. Happy trails to you. Keep smiling until then. Who cares about the clouds if we're together?
Just sing a song and bring the sunny weather. Happy trails
to you till we meet again. That's for Trigger and Bullet and Mom and I.
and buttermilk.
Buttermilk.
Thank you so much.
Thank
This
you.
has been
Okay,
wonderful.
thank you.
Nice to be with you.
Very much.
God bless you.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
God bless you a lot.
Meet Herb Jefferies, the happy cowboy. Actually, he's the singing cowboy and a movie star on top of that. Because back in 1937 and 38, the powers that be in Hollywood decided it would be a good idea to make some westerns with all black cast. And Herb was chosen to star in the 4 movies that were actually shot and distributed around the country to small black movie theaters.
How's the ammunition holding out?
There's only 2 left.
You're welcome.
Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you, too.
Today, Herb lives in Los Angeles, but still travels around the world singing with big bands. His Western movie career, however, ended with those 4 movies back in the late 30s. Movies that are now an obscure but very important part of history. And they definitely bring back fond memories for Herb.
So you heard it from... I already used double R. I was going to call him double H, but I feel like that's using it too much.
Double H.
There it is, old Herbie.
Yeah. The song is Flamingo. The band is the Duke Ellington band.
And the human is the happy cowboy.
He sure is the happy singing cowboy.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And as you heard in the clip, Herb Jefferies was a black cowboy who did black westerns for black theaters. If that ain't segregation, I don't know what is. But, you know, this is a long, long time ago. This is the 30s, they said?
Yeah.
So, you know, a different time. Almost like over 80 years ago.
Well, the real difference here is that I've been the designated driver for friends that have went to bars.
Yeah.
And also I've went to shows at bars. I'm not a drinker, but what I do drink are Roy Rogers is.
So, okay, what are those exactly?
It's like a Shirley Temple.
Is it just like what they call it for boys? That's kind of a funny thing that they have to call it a boy thing.
You would think, right? But Coke Zero is just like Diet Coke,
marketed
to boys.
Well, it's not the same thing, right? Well, look up the exact the exact ingredients. Hold on.
This is amazing.
Okay, they're a little different.
Yeah. So Shirley Temple is
It's cut with Sprite.
the grenadine and the Sprite, and then the Roy Rogers is grenadine and Coke.
Which, if you're a fan of Cherry Coke, which
I
think a lot of people are, Roy Rogers is the way to go. But I would always order a Roy Rogers. I don't ever recall there being a Herb Jefferies on the menu.
Well, I mean, I think it's haphazard if you end up having a drink named after you. Like, why does Arnold Palmer have the Arnold Palmer? Like, I don't think he necessarily invented it. He was just the most famous person to drink that. Maybe it was the same thing with Roy.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Back to Herb, because he's our main man right now. These movies that they were making back then, he described them as quickies.
Old quickie movies. Shot in, 7 days?
7 days from sun up to sundown.
You would never know because of how high quality.
Yeah. I mean, movies back
Nature.
then, this was like, low-tech kind of stuff. But
The stuff that was real to me in watching his movies were the fight scenes.
Yeah, man.
So the fight scenes were kind of fake, but the wrestling scenes, which have fallen
the pulled punches, those are always kind of fake looking if they don't like cut at the right time.
right.
But yeah, there's a couple scenes that they're showing in these videos where they're just straight up wrestling in the dirt.
Yeah, it's pretty hard, like real tackles too.
Totally.
So did you notice the TV that Herb is
Oh yeah.
watching this integrated TV speakers?
Is the console TV.
Yeah. So we had one of these growing up.
Oh yeah.
And something happened with the bulb. It broke, but the speakers still worked. Have I told you about this?
No.
Okay. So my mom's great idea, which still is a great idea, is she tossed a tablecloth over it, bought a new Sanyo, plopped it right on top, turned both of them on. So we had 4 speakers.
I never heard of
Right? And I was always so afraid growing up that people would think, oh, what's under the tablecloth? It's another TV. But here's the thing. I remember it was later, but Jeff Foxworthy was in a stand-up.
Oh yeah.
And he referred to this setup that we had as the white trash surround sound.
I remember that joke. I totally remember that joke. I never heard you tell me that you actually did it, though.
Yeah, we did it.
Oh, man.
For sure.
Do you think your mom learned it from Jeff?
I don't
Or
think
it
so.
just
I think it was
happened?
just an original idea. And this is something that's usually attributed to my dad, these kind of ideas.
Yeah.
But no, this was all my mom.
Well, they were made for each other, I guess.
True love.
Coming up with these great doohickey contraptions that they would have. Another thing about the TV setup that they have while Herb and Huell are watching the videos is that they got the VCR there, and you notice that like these are his movies that he was in, but they're just watching them on like blank Memorex cassette tapes.
Uh-huh.
Like, are these impossible to find?
Maybe, but these could be the first edition VHS tapes.
Yeah.
I said
we
VCR tapes.
I know. That's a thing I've noticed about the passage of time when it comes to home video watching is that everyone in the 90s had a VCR. And then in the late 90s, early 2000s, it switched to DVD players. And somewhere along the lines, everyone seems to have forgotten that they're not called VHS players. They were called VCRs. I don't know how many times I've heard someone say, "Oh, I don't have a VHS player anymore." And I said, "Well, I never had one. I had a VCR."
That's the same thing, though. People refer to ATMs as ATM machines.
Yeah.
Say, no, machine's already in the
Exactly.
in the term. So,
I mean, if you want to get real deep with this, technically there are VHS players, and those were VCRs that weren't video cassette recorders. They were only players. And I used to call them VCPs as a kid, thought it was so smart. But no one cared, and that's why I didn't have a lot of friends.
well, we had I know people have talked about this. We actually had a Betamax.
Yeah, those were much more prevalent than people really remember.
Yeah, because we had the remote that was about 12 feet long and
With the
stretched.
cord?
Yeah, with the
Yeah.
cord. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that someone had these tapes. In fact, in the credits, we find out where these Black Cowboy film clips came from, because they apparently came from Woody Wise discount videotapes.
In Burbank, right?
Yeah, what a weird place to have to find your own movies in. Like a discount video store.
Like you're just calling around in the phone book trying to find them,
Yeah, exactly.
finally source them.
Herb is kind of describing these movies, and there were only a couple of them. I think they made like 6 or 8 of these movies. They're mostly it's interesting because they're not really all that different than a traditional Western, except for one thing. It really feels like just black people in a Western. They don't really change it up too much because they've got a black audience apparently, which is what they thought. This would only be black people watching these, except for the dancing.
The tap dancing.
Yeah, which...
Well, he says that it's tap dancing was popular in Harlem.
Yeah, which I'm not sure how popular tap dancing was in Harlem in the 30s. There's not a lot of talk about that stuff, but it really does seem a bit much, like unnecessary kind of a thing. But I don't know. I don't know the context of these movies, of the race relations when it comes to black cowboys at the time. I'm just putting it in our own context now, and the fact that it kind of looks a little suspect.
All right. Well, fair enough.
Really, when you take these movies as they are at face value, it's pretty interesting that there was so much just straightforward, one for one. This is just a cowboy movie. They just happen to be black people in it, because you'd think that there would be more of that kind of like, feeling they got to change things up because it's black people. They seem cool.
Yeah.
He considered
Totally cool.
himself the Roy Rogers of black cowboy movies. And, I mean, they wear the same neckerchief.
Which I'm a fan of.
You sure
Could
are.
never pull it off, but I'm a fan of it.
So that was a shorty. And it was a quickie, actually. And we're rolling towards the end.
And we see the real color.
Yeah. It's almost like they forgot to put the sepia tone on the outro of Huell on the Universal set. But we're not fully done. We get another little quickie, and we head up to Oakland real quick.
Right? And we see the Black Cowboy Parade.
Yeah. Is a really interesting thing to happen in like downtown Oakland. And it seems like Huell went up there not with a lot of questions in hand other than one. Are you a real cowboy? He asks that to everyone.
And you hear a few different things.
Uh-huh.
Because it was an older lady. He says, "Oh no, you're a cowgirl," and she says, "I'm a cow woman." Okay, that doesn't roll off the tongue as well, but everyone's entitled to whatever you want to be called. And then we move to the bus. Are you real cowboys in here? And I'm a cowboy. I'm a cowgirl. All these kids.
Yep.
And then the mom, out of nowhere, pops out. Says, "I'm a cow mama."
I don't know what's funnier, that or the fact that you called the covered wagon a bus. I mean, I guess it was a bus back then, but...
Oh, man.
But this is a real quick thing. This like 3 minutes of him kind of just getting shots of the Black Cowboy parade that goes on, his little interviews he's got, which this feels like a video log.
Yeah.
Just like the Herb Jefferies thing. One, because Huell seemed to really only wear a denim button-down shirt in video logs, and that's what he's wearing in both these.
Mm-hmm.
And his hair seems a bit browner also. But
Yeah. It's a good question. I don't know.
until KCET loosens the reins on these video log archives that they've got, we don't really know. There isn't much as far as information. But that's about it, right?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, the credits start rolling as we get a shot of some of the Cowboys walking sideways down the street.
Yeah, that seems to be their
horse.
biggest trick is going sideways. Well, before we wrap it on up, I wanted to tell a little story I heard from one of our friends on Instagram. One of the things that Alan and I set out to find when we started the show is people who knew Huell strictly on a personal basis, not necessarily tied with the show. Huell friends.
Right, just to get a glimpse, right?
Yeah, because Huell was a private guy, and not that we want to pry into his private life, but we just want to get a glimpse into the kind of guy he really was. And I talked to someone on Instagram who posted a picture of the Huell donut at the Donut Man donut shop in Los Angeles, and he mentioned that he was the person who introduced Huell to this donut. So I reached out, I asked him for the whole story, and he said that he met Huell in the early 80s, so pre-California's Gold, and that he went to the gym with Huell. Huell would come and hang out at his house, and one day they decided to go get this peanut butter pocket donut. Huell fell in love with this thing. And this is what is now known as the Huell donut at the Donut Man. So I liked that little bit. I asked for some more. And he said that him and Huell only stayed friends for a few years after this, so into the California's Gold days. And that one day, Huell calls him up, and he's hosting a award ceremony. And would he want to come down and hang out in this hotel lobby with himself and Muhammad Ali? So he said, of course, and he runs down there, and he gets to spend the afternoon with the champ. And that's the kind of perks you get, I guess, if you're Huell Hauser's friend.
That is crazy.
And, obviously there's probably some more stories like that out there, and we'd love to hear them. If anyone knew Huell on a personal basis or knows some funny tidbits, like we're hearing them here and there. We're trying to get a picture of this guy. He's such an interesting guy, and I feel like we know him so well from the show already that
Right.
I just want to... I want all the...
You just want to tie it all together.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So that'd be great if anyone can share more stories with him.
Yeah, hit us up. HuellsGold@gmail.com. Huell's Gold Podcast on Instagram. Huells_Gold on Twitter. We're everywhere. We may be even going worldwide.
The internet is pretty much worldwide.
It is?
I don't know.
Okay.
It goes pretty far, we'll just say that.
Whatever. It is the World Wide Web, I guess.
That's true.
Well, where are we
right.
going next week?
We are going to go to the Blossom Trail.
We sure are. We actually really did go to the Blossom
We
Trail.
did, and we're going to have a recap of our day. Your wife, Erin, is going to be on.
Your wife, Kathleen, is going to be on.
Our friend Steven and his wife, Megan.
Yep.
Which they're going to be on as well, because we all had a fun trip.
They were our tour guides.
They were
in
our
Fresno.
tour guides, yeah.
They're
Yeah.
Fresnonians?
Fresnonians.
Okay.
Yeah, totally. They're masters of the Fresno scene.
That's
so,
right.
well, them and our boy Jeremy out there in Fresno,
Yeah, maybe Chico.
old Chinatown master.
There you go. It's going to be a good one. You're going to get to hear how the Blossom Trail was back in the day, how it is now.
And how it's going to be in the future.
You darn tootin'. It's our first time in Fresno. It won't be our last. It's one of our favorite places in the state. And we just hope that you come along with us next time as we continue our search together
For Cowboys,
Huell's Gold.
go.
Now, where are the cowboys and cowgirls?
Cowboy.
You're a cowboy,
Yeah. I'm a cowgirl.
and you're a cowgirl.
Yeah.
They're ready, aren't they?
And I'm a cow mama.